Hi, colleagues. It's John Fischetti, along with Scott Emig, and welcome to episode 5 of We Will Get Through This, Transformative Leadership for Disruptive Times. And Scott, it's great to be with you for this episode. What's on tap today?
Hey, John. Today we're going to focus in on the importance of our staff, importance of supporting our staff, and really the importance at this specific time of being involved in their lives.
Yeah, building the team is really so crucial. And I thought we'd start by just sharing a little bit more about ourselves. Scott, you want to go first? Let's remind the audience of our backgrounds a little bit.
Sure, John. So I'm a former elementary and middle school teacher. I now find myself working at a university running a leadership preparation program, and I'm responsible for about 200 doctoral students here at the University of Newcastle as well. So my whole career has really been involved in education at one level or another.
Yeah, fantastic background and so much leadership you're doing now. I was thinking of a couple things the audience might not know. My first experience was after I graduated from the University of Virginia. I'm not exactly sure what I did. I went to the Volunteers for in Service to America VISTA program and was at the Haitian Refugee Center in Miami, Florida, where I was working with young Haitian children who hadn't been to school in a long time. Their written language had not occurred, and they were now plucked down as 14-year-olds in the Miami-Dade County schools with basically no education background, no literacy at all, and trying to negotiate how that was going to work for them. And then my first real teaching job was actually running a tutoring program for Cambodian refugee kids who came out of the Pol Pot regime. When Pol Pot was the god-awful dictator of Cambodia, he executed basically virtually all of the educated people. That's the teachers, the accountants, the doctors, anybody who might have had a pushback to his awful power. And those were the buried in the killing fields. You might have seen that movie a long time ago or read the terrible history in Cambodia. A lot of those children were grabbed up by religious organizations in the world who were orphans and placed and popped around the Western world. And in Western Massachusetts, where I was at the time doing my doctoral program, ran a program for refugee kids at the local high school, which was for many of them the first formal schooling they had. And again, high school age students not been in school because they've been in refugee camps. And basically it was one of the first teaching English as a second language programs in the country. So my first two major experiences as a teacher were really working with marginalized populations who had come to the United States forcibly or unwillingly, or some out of awful situations like the murders of their parents, destruction of their country, but trying to figure out how education could work for them in a system that seems to be rolling over its momentum each year just because it's the status quo. So I think those have shaped me more than I even realized today.
I'm sure those experiences were profound. Um, I think we find ourselves in a uncharted territory right now, and as you and I have talked about, we're relying on our own histories and we're relying on our own experiences to help us get through this, and we know that we will get through this. But the powerful thing that we can't push out of our minds is the importance of our teams. It's the importance of making everybody who we work with, everybody who works for us, everybody who is above us in terms of our organizational hierarchy. It's incredibly important right now to make sure that we have the sense that we're all in this together, and that we really need to focus on building those teams in this time. And John, one of the things that I've really always appreciated about your leadership style is that you have this question that you ask everybody, and that's what can I do as a leader to help you do your job better? And can you tell us a little bit about where does that come from?
I think that any of us who are in leadership roles, whether that's formal or informal, but particularly school leadership, have to remember why we're here. In many parts of the world, they still call it school administration. And I don't like that word because to me, that means someone going to do all the stuff no one else wants to do. And I guess, that's part of everybody's job, but it's really got to be school leadership first. So the admin stuff is the day-to-day nuance of keeping things together. But actually what we're really here to do is to make sure the talent, which is what our deputies, the school leadership team, and of course, obviously our amazing teachers, our clerical staff, our cleaning staff, they're the ones that keep this together. So really my job is to help you do your job. And then alongside of that, I get to have some fun because not all of that is every day, all day. It might feel that way. So if you think about it, that's the role of a leader, is to help everybody get their job done. And in doing so, delegate that authority to make sure that they're looking out for their teams as well. So I think that's the role. Sometimes it feels like the pyramid's in reverse. I
Hmm.
don't think teachers feel that all the time. I feel like they feel they're reporting up, but I sort of feel like we're reporting down. That what matters is most is the magic between a teacher and her students. And then we're supposed to make more of that happen. And at a university level, it's the same.
That's exactly right. And one of the things we're all aware of the research that shows that teachers are the most important variable in schools in terms of pupil learning. But school leaders are right behind in terms of their effects on the what happens in
Mhm.
class. But one of the pieces of research that really doesn't get a lot of play, and I think it's really important in light of this conversation, is it's the work that Ken Leithwood and some of his colleagues have done, which shows that if you get your staff motivated, if you get them committed to the organization, and if you really focus on their working conditions, if you really focus on how do they feel about the place where they work, that is far more powerful than an administrator or a principal just coming in and giving instructional guidance. It's about making people feel really connected and valued and wanted. And that's the message that we today more than ever, perhaps, that's the message we need to be sending.
I think for most of the listeners, they will be in a country which has gone in the last 15 or 20 years sort of to the dark side of high stakes assessment systems, which put a lot of pressure on school leaders to conform and comply to policies which are really more about testing than they are about learning. So,
Mhm.
one of the cute things I try to talk about, we've created testing centers instead of learning centers. And in that, I think it's co-opted the DNA of a lot of great people who were wonderful teachers into compliance with that mantra. And I think those leaders who have made it through it with their kind of dignity intact have been able to see through that a bit and let the test be the result, not the purpose. So if we're doing really great teaching and learning, and our assessment is focused on really learning as interpreted by teachers, not by a test, the test will probably be fine. And if we're providing additional support to kids that need that, who come from different backgrounds, who are just learning English or whatever language is the primary language in your country, I think we do have the chance to flip that. And so that's the portion of instructional leadership I think some of our colleagues, this podcast could help reframe. In most of the world, they consider the school leader to be the instructional leader. And I don't disagree with that. In fact, the standards in Australia would say that that's really the job that people do. And most of the rest of the world, they were the same standards, just slightly different order. But I think instructional leadership doesn't mean that every day you're in every classroom watching and taking notes and having a debriefing. It really means is you've chosen the team and made priority learning in your school. So it's about the team you develop, not about your ability as a teacher back in the day, or if you're still teaching. We have a lot of colleagues who are continuing to teach. But I think it's a different definition of instructional leadership.
I fully agree with you. I think this notion that we expect we expect principals to come into classrooms and that we expect principals to have the answer to every situation. It's not feasible, and honestly, it's also counterproductive because if you don't build a team by having the one individual that the entire team now has to look to come up with the right answer. Um, so in terms of building that team, in terms of supporting that team, there's a lot of low hanging fruit out there. There's things that are that our colleagues who are listening to this right now can be doing, and you know we've talked about this before, but it's so incredibly important to take a personal interest. Take a personal interest at this moment in your team. You know, you have, and it's not just about the individuals. Take a personal interest in their families as well. You have an opportunity right now. You're sitting there, you're watching this. You have an opportunity now to open up your email, dash off an email right now to, to one of your deputies, one of your teachers, one of your support staff, a custodian. send off a note. Let them know how you really appreciate what they're doing and ask how they're coping.
I was just in a meeting with 17 colleagues from our faculty. That's 3 schools in our Uber sort of college approach here, as you know.
Mhm.
And one of them was stressed because, the international flights are stopping, and the restart of those looks out there a long way. And this is a fantastic colleague, by the way, but they're basically now really worried about not when, but if they're going to see their families. And so I just sent her a note immediately afterwards and said exactly what you said. Are you all right? Because I know this is hard. I was in talking about, missing my grandbaby, and I was supposed to be on a plane to go visit them this week for Easter coming up, as you were going to see your family for in between a couple conferences this month, and we've had to park those. But I was able to assure her that it's not if, it's when, that this interruption nobody signed up for, but this silly virus is, we're going to be okay. We're going to get through this. But helping reframe that. And she just talked about, and then we had a conversation for real on the phone. She just felt it was good to get it off her chest because she was just building up this stress and this tension. And I think whether someone's family lives in the next state, now borders are closed, or they live a plane flight array and they can't make that flight now, or it looks like it's going to be months before they might see their families, they're under a lot of stress. Or the single mom who's working at home trying to teach synchronously while her own kids are online trying to do the same thing in their schools, and the internet's a little wobbly. Everybody's under so much pressure to reach out and have that human side, that humanity component is absolutely the best gift that you can have right now as a leader. I think what's helpful is also we've parked some of those state and national tests in certain jurisdictions and just said, well, that's not going to happen. And I think it gives the freedom to say, okay, maybe we can go back to what we were doing in the 80s before all this happened, really focusing on exemplary teaching and learning and authentic assessment, not standardized, norm referenced, basically arbitrary assessment. So I think we have a window here that might actually be a good thing, even amongst all the other silliness we're dealing with.
And that is, I think, where the opportunity is. I think right now we have the opportunity to really be thinking about why are schools set up the way they are? Why is it that we gear everything up to those end of year tests? Why is it that so much time is lost in schools?
Yeah.
Those months of preparation, you and I both come from the United States, and one of the things I've been pleased with in Australia is there is not as much lost time in terms of focusing on those end of year tests, but man, there still is a lot of lost time.
Yeah, and a lot of stress
Yep.
that's put on young people that we really don't understand, because now we're into the second generation of young people. That's all they've known.
Yep.
I think it's debilitating, and maybe we'll get back some of that humanity as a result of this, extended new way of doing business. Scott, I think the other component is that when we get back to whatever old normal was in the future normal that we don't know when it's going to be, is to figure out how to blend the technology in so when we're together, we really do take advantage of the time we are together. For a while, a lot of people were advocating flipped classrooms, where you do some of this stuff, students take part in that, and then they come to school ready to go. As you know, I call it like we should flip the school, because we got to have everybody who's on the same page for the vision. And now I think we flip the world. We flipped the world upside down, because here we are, everybody's doing this now as if a month ago we would have said no, and today we've got all schools online. Well, I'm not sure it's all great, but we certainly have taken a leap nobody would have said was possible without COVID. So I think we're going to have to now back away and say, okay, what do we want when we're together as in a meeting of our staff? What do we want when we're in a meeting of our leadership team or executive? Do we really want to run through minutes and have those approved for 10 minutes? Can't we do that offline? What are we going to do when we're together to really be human about this human experiment, called education? I think that could refocus our journey on the priorities, parking everything into things like this that are less needy to be actually in the same space. So that's going to be an interesting experiment that each of our listeners may want to try out when they're back, to totally look at the agendas they've been thinking were the normal agendas and throw everything out except that which allows us to connect as humans, even from a meter and a half away.
And that is the exciting part. Right now, everybody is scrambling to make this work. We're all working really hard, and we know the listeners out there are working incredibly hard to help their students be prepared, to help their parents understand what's happening, to keep everybody in the loop. But there'll be a moment. You're going to get to a moment. Everybody will reach it differently, but there's going to be a moment we're going to find where it's working. A little messy, but it's working. And that's the moment where, we would encourage you to now think about the next project. Take the time to figure out what is it that you want to analyze for when things move back to normal. Spend time, thinking about any aspect of the way that you currently run your school. Pre-COVID, post-COVID, there's no reason why they have to look the same.
Right. And I think the same way for schools that were maybe a little slower in this journey, and they might have listened to or watched the previous episodes just before this one in our series, are really thinking about where your school is on the journey of change. For some, a brand new principal coming in just this year, maybe just getting their feet under them to be able to make some change happen. For others, years on the job, maybe much more confident. And what I'm going to say is pick the one thing that could make your school pop out to your community and in many ways in your sector. And don't worry that you're tackling all of it, and get your team around that. I think as we in future episodes introduce the bringing the good weather mindset, the vision component of things is so crucial. But let's pick the one, and it's the one that fits maybe the philosophy of your staff prior, but ups it a bit, or maybe it's one that would create the most agreement without a lot of hassle. Is it collaboration? That we're going to be a school where people work together effectively? Is it that we're really going to push higher order thinking, critical thinking, and problem solving? So for the rest of this year, whenever that starts, or for next year, if it is then when it starts, we're going to make that the theme. Find a theme that allows you to take your leadership vision and wrap it around and get every member of your team sort of relevant around that for them. A collaboration to me is one of those that every one of the private sector industries says is number one to them. They want people who can work together to solve problems, create knowledge, so they can do their thing, and reach their value proposition, or so to speak. But many ways, schools have been terrible role models for collaboration. Different rules in different classrooms because different teachers enforce it differently, or it's just silly, the rules that we apply. So in democracy, our prime ministers or presidents or councils or parliaments seem to always just be arguing and creating all this disruption. Could we find a way that we practice deliberately, using some of the best pedagogies out there, building our learners' ability to work together and our own ability to work together, and even learning how to disagree? I think the most fundamental concept in democracy is learning how to disagree, and our role models out there are not teaching us well on Twitter right now.
No, what an incredible goal. Imagine if we come out of this with a better educated citizenry. We come out of this with the understanding that education is really about building a more informed group of individuals, about building better societies. We can stop perhaps this competitive framework that seems to undergird everything we do, and inject just a little bit of collaboration. So if my school is doing well and the school down the street's not doing so well, it's okay to make the phone call and have the conversation.
Yeah.
Here's what we're doing, and vice versa. To admit there's some things that aren't going really well in my building. I'd love to find out what they're doing over there. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bigger team. That we're on our team in our own schools, but we're also part of a bigger team in our society. And our kids are looking to us for how we're handling this. And they're modeling or channeling whatever we're saying. And we're going to be okay through this, but the challenges are going to test our ability to actually practice what we preach. I think, and every super leader at every district or state or province level is really looking for who's going to rise up at this time and make it through creating an improved learning culture, and not letting it kind of fall into disarray or chaos. I think some amazing things have already started to happen, where we're going to be able to use technology differently and also cherish the times when we need to turn it off and just be together in a circle in a classroom having a discussion the old school way. Finding that balance with your own team is going to be vital. And I look forward to the opportunities for those listeners to share examples with us of how they're building those teams. There's a lot of models, there's a lot of framework, there's a lot of gurus, there's a lot of workshops, there's a lot of for-profit stuff that does a good job with that. But I don't think you need the magic formula. I think they actually have it within their own hearts to say, we're going to slow down. We're going to go deeper rather than wider. We're going to stop the rush pace of whatever pre-COVID was. And we're going to try to get to the priorities of really having kids master key concepts and strategies and disciplines and domains, but not for the sake of a test, but because they're cherished knowledge that takes us forward to be able to understand and live great lives. But we don't have to cover the book. We might find the 10 things that we repeat and teach so dynamically that students actually learn them. And the magic of young people is through osmosis, they figure the rest out. And we got 4-year-olds downloading apps, so we really didn't need the instruction manual for that. What I'm excited about is the chance to help guide that in this time so our leaders don't get in despair or kind of down themselves, because a lot of the admin part of the job is extraordinarily grueling and wearing. And we've got to have the fun of the leadership part that's really about building the talent around you to take this on, both in the present funny world we're in, but from here, because this will pass. It rotate its belt back every year, but we've been dealing with illnesses of people in schools every day. We have new teachers we need to bring in because people are sick. We've got kids sick. There's no newness to the fact that we might have illnesses in our society.
Not at all. And I think, I think that's a wonderful way of wrapping that up, John. And what I think we want to do, we want to hear from people who are listening to this. So if we can encourage people who are listening to this to post any comments about what they're doing, what is that one thing that they're thinking about right now? It would be what you pitched the idea of collaboration. What a novel idea, but anybody in the who's listening, we'd love to hear what's the project or what's the process that's currently happening in your school that you want to step back. You want to say we've always done it that way. We have this attendance policy. We have these rules for this group of students. Let's step back and ask ourselves, why do we do it that way? And then let's hear from you. What are you thinking about working on?
Yeah, fantastic idea. In our next episode, we also want to focus on having our leaders take care of themselves, staying well and fit. And we look forward to our next episode. And I think the mantra that we want to keep pushing, and I really hope everybody gets this. We are going to get through this. We will get through this.
We certainly will. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.